I just want to make sure you're safe to drive the way I do it. Okay.
Unlike alcohol, there is no breathalyzer for pot. Instead, police rely on a mix of instinct and experience to sniff out someone who's high.
Have you eaten today? What have you been drinking? When did you last sleep? Do you know what time it is now without looking at your watch?
The test is a drug influence evaluation. It's decades old and based largely on observations and physical coordination, not quite scientific.
A DRE evaluation is subjective from the beginning. And what I'm finding, or that I'm seeing, is that police officers have a really hard time being unbiased.
But the federal government is spending roughly $80 million to train more officers to administer it anyway. Fifth Estate conducted its own investigation of the test. Mark Kelly was on that story.
Okay, so let's start with who you're talking to there and what you were trying to determine with your story.
Well, from the outset, I think we were surprised to learn that there wasn't some sort of roadside device that people could use, that police could use to be able to determine whether people were impaired on drugs. So that was the first thing. So then we moved to the second thing. What is this test and just how reliable is it? So the gentleman we're talking to is Steve Maxwell. He is a retired Ontario police officer. He's a drug recognition expert. He's the guy who would administer this test back at the police station if police believed it, they suspected a driver was driving high. He's given this test. He's taught this test to other police officers as well. So he's the expert. He's like a black belt in this. He's now retired, but we wanted him to come in, show us how it works. But just to make the game a little bit more interesting, we got 3 volunteers. One of them stayed up all night, so it hadn't slept in 24 hours. One of them didn't eat for 24 hours.
Which affects your sort of cognitive ability, right?
And another one who was a medical marijuana licensed user, this person had actually used marijuana. So from the 3 people coming up there, 3 of them destabilized. We wanted to know, using this 12-step process that they do, could our drug recognition expert smoke out the person who is high? And this is what happened. We'll show you.
Tilt your head back, close your eyes, and estimate the passage of 30 seconds. Take 9 heel-to-toe steps down the line. Okay, begin.
1, 2,
8, 9, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007.
Right? Your psychophysical tests, your divided attention tests, you should pass them with flying colors because they're simple and easy to do if you're not impaired.
So what's interesting is we know that he did sort of pick out the right person, but even though it worked, he says there are shortcomings with this test.
Plenty of shortcomings, and this is really the focus of our investigation on the Fifth Estate. For one thing, there's something called confirmation bias. So here's the scenario. A police officer arrests somebody on the side of the road, says, I believe this person is stoned, hands that person over to our drug recognition expert. They're saying, they're stoned. I want you to confirm this. So immediately you have a confirmation bias, as opposed to saying, is this person impaired, full stop? And that's just a natural tendency that we have. Police may have tunnel vision. You're only looking for the things you want to see. Say if you walk around with a hammer, everything in the world starts to look like a nail. So this becomes part of the problem that's put into this as well. But also is that some of these things we saw, these little physical tests, stand on one leg, your ability to walk a straight line. You may fail these tests for a multitude of reasons.
You might be nervous.
You may be nervous. You may be, in one case, somebody in our story had been involved in a car accident. She was arrested for being impaired. Her airbags went off, hurt her legs. So when she was asked to stand on one leg, she couldn't do it. Well, we saw her report. She gets an X on that for failing that. And that's the problem. There are lots of reasons you could fail this test that have nothing to do with the driver being impaired. And yet this is being seen as the gold standard test for drivers right now who are suspected of driving high.
So why is that? Is it because there's nothing better around and this is the best they got, or is there something else out there?
This is the best they've got for now. Now, we contacted the Public Safety Minister's office, Ralph Goodale. He says the government is looking towards some sort of tongue swab, a saliva test. But we looked into those tests as well. They are unreliable to measure if you have drugs. Yes, they can detect drugs. And yes, police officers in this drug recognition evaluation, they're good at detecting what kind of drug they believe somebody has consumed. But Diana, that doesn't answer the fundamental question. Are you impaired? These people are being arrested for impaired driving. If you've consumed a little bit of marijuana, it's like saying you've had 1 beer or 1 glass of wine. That doesn't mean you're impaired.
Right, so where's the line?
Where's the line? And how do you measure where that line is?
Are there people saying that this is a whole cart before the horse, that maybe we should have had this worked out before we move to legalize?
Well, indeed, because what we're seeing and what our investigation has uncovered, and when we look at cases that we saw in the United States, now they're starting to push back. People are starting to push back. Already there are courts in 6 states which no longer accept the testimony of these drug recognition experts because they believe they're unreliable. Here in Canada, Mad Canada, of all people, who, you know, campaigning against driving drunk or driving impaired, they've come out to say this system we believe to be cumbersome, expensive, and it won't lead to actual court convictions. Stats Canada itself, and we looked into these numbers, say that in 60% of the cases, or 60% of the cases of drug-impaired driving, you can get a conviction. But that means in 40% of those cases, people who have been charged with drug-impaired driving walk free because the evidence doesn't stick. So there's a problem here. And the government admits there's a problem. They say they need more research. But for now, this is the best system we have.
We've put up a link so people can see the full story. Thanks for talking about it.
Thanks, Diana.